Mythposter syndrome.
Hi folks, welcome back to my series Bridging the Gap, where we make functional play guides for players looking to get into the endgame and be ready for group content. My name's Myth, and this week we'll be discussing my favorite job, and the job I play more than any other, Warrior. Warrior is a class that specializes in performing all types of physical damage. It has a vast arsenal of effective weapons to choose from and offers unique buffs to the party. Unlike many other damage dealers in the game, Warrior can fit into almost any setup and is arguably the current premier melee DD. To effectively play Warrior at its most basic level, you'll need a good TP set, preferably with lots of defensive traits because you'll likely end up tanking pretty often, and a strong weapon skill set. Weapon skill sets can start simple, but once you feel more comfortable with the job, they should be tailored for individual weapon skills with different modifiers. Other things to add would be gear that complements job abilities such as Berserk, Warcry, and Mighty Strikes. I'll link a gear guide below with my recommended gear sets. Kicking off job abilities is a big one, Berserk. At level 99, Berserk gives a 35% attack increase and lowers defense by 25%. Berserk is incredibly helpful when trying to reach the attack cap, and with modern gear, it can essentially be kept up full time. Berserk's counterpart is Defender. Defender increases defense by 35% and decreases attack by 25%. Defender is rarely significant on its own these days. Oftentimes the best use is to pair it with Berserk. When you pair these two together, you effectively have a 10% bonus to both attack and defense. This allows you to be a bit more tanky while still being able to go on the offensive. Another similar ability is Aggressor. Aggressor raises accuracy by 25 and lowers evasion by 25. Aggressor can come in handy in a pinch if you're low on accuracy, but it shouldn't be relied upon to make up for insufficient gear sets or buffs. Provoke is a Warrior staple. If you remember EXPing in the dunes back in the 2000s, likely you'll remember tanking lizards and goblins while relying on this ability. Provoke has aged relatively poorly, and it is not great at generating enmity. However, it is good to grab hate right at the beginning of a fight, so a monster doesn't go running to your backline before you can solidify hate with a few weapon skills. The next three job abilities are what makes a Warrior a standout DD. They are powerful not only because it makes you a stronger DD, but it increases the entire group's performance. Tomahawk is a merit ability that is applied to the monster that reduces resistances to damage types a monster may have natively. Removing these resistances can allow for interesting combinations, such as allowing helices to be effectively placed by a scholar for Odyssey RP farming, and they're very handy in increasing damage output when monsters may have a partial resistance. A good example of this would be the Helm Zerd, which resists almost all types of damage. A well-placed Tomahawk could increase everyone's damage significantly. Warcry is an AoE ability that increases the attack of your party. When the Savagery trait is merited, Warcry becomes the single strongest attack buff available in the game for most scenarios. Savagery gives a plus 100 TP bonus with each merit. When paired with a Relic Mask, it can give a total of plus 700 TP bonus with full merits. When you take into account how many weapon skills scale substantially with TP, Warcry is an incredibly important job ability that should be used as often as possible for any important fights you may be going into. The last ability that Warrior has that affects the whole party is Blood Rage. Blood Rage increases critical hit rate by 20%. This ability is best used when Warcry is on cooldown. It gives a slight damage increase, but make sure that you do not use it at the same time as Warcry. Blood Rage and Warcry take up the same buff slot, meaning they overwrite each other. If you Warcry and then immediately Blood Rage after, Warcry will be overwritten. That means that you just lost out on the TP bonus, which is the much stronger ability. Warrior's first SP, Mighty Strikes, is also worth a quick mention only because it is so strong. It can be paired with the Relic Hands to force all melee hits to be critical hits for up to 1 minute. It is quite possibly the strongest damage dealer SP ability for fights where zerging is important. Moving away from job abilities, now we'll discuss subjobs. The two main subjobs currently used for Warrior are Dragoon and Samurai. In order to make your decision between the two, you need to understand what each of these offer. The Dragoon subjob is primarily used when taking advantage of the job trait Fencer. Fencer grants a TP bonus when using a one-handed weapon in the main hand only. This enhances the damage from weapon skills like Savage Blade or Mistral Axe because they scale so well with higher TP values. This is then combined with a Dragoon trait that gives you a weapon skill damage boost of up to 10% if you have high enough master level. These traits, paired with the Dragoon subjob's ability to manage hate with Super Jump, which is also obtained through master levels, makes your Dragoon a very popular subjob for Warrior. Be aware though, without some sort of job ability haste like a Dancer giving you Haste Samba, you will attack and gain TP slower than you would with the Samurai subjob. Now we'll go over the Samurai subjob. Samurai sub should be used when primarily using two-handed weapons like Great Axe, Polearm, or Greatsword. This is because the job ability Hasso gives 10% job ability haste, allowing you to reach the 80% attack speed cap without Haste Samba or Dual Wield. This means that a warrior using Hasso will attack roughly 15% faster than one with no job ability haste. 15% may not seem like a lot, but it is very noticeable in the moment. The Samurai subjob also offers a store TP trait of up to plus 20 store TP with master levels. Combining Hasso and store TP means you will weapon skill much more frequently than you would with a Dragoon subjob. It also gives you many more options to skill chain with two-handed weapons, which can be an exponential damage increase when used in the right scenario. Choosing between these two subjobs is a matter of knowing which weapons will benefit the group the most in the content you are participating in. In general, I lean towards Samurai subjob for more experienced players, and Dragoon subjob for newer players who may not have access to the two-handed weapons that really make the Samurai sub shine. I'll go into more detail about that as we discuss weapon choice next. Before we go into specific weapons, it's important to know weapon types. There are 3 types of physical damage Warrior will deal: slashing, piercing, and blunt. If you're gearing up for serious endgame content like Odyssey, you should have options for all 3. Blunt damage is best paired with the Fencer job trait we discussed earlier, and a single-handed club. Blunt damage is typically applied best to undead monsters that have a native resistance to piercing and slashing. Piercing damage is mostly done with a warrior using the Ambuscade polearm. Impulse Drive is an incredibly strong weapon skill when used appropriately, and can be extremely effective when used against monsters that are weak to piercing, such as birds, wyverns, and many more. The last damage type is a warrior's most used type, slashing. The slashing damage is typically the default damage type and is most often applied by using the Ambuscade sword or the Aeonic Great Axe. When deciding on a damage type, it's important to know the monster you're fighting. With the advent of Odyssey, many players seem to have forgotten that damage weaknesses and resistances are family-based and persist throughout the world of Final Fantasy XI. The easiest way to find this information is to pull up BG Wiki and look at the resistance tables for the different monsters. Choosing a weapon type that gets a percentage damage boost compared to a different damage type can significantly increase your damage. And remember, if a monster does resist certain damage types, Tomahawk can help mitigate that damage penalty. A very frequent question I get from new warriors is what your default weapon should be, or what weapon they should aim for further down the line. The answer is, it's complicated. The Naegling specializes in burst damage by performing heavy hitting weapon skills. Naegling, which comes from Ambuscade, excels in fights where you don't want a skill chain, or specific content such as Shoal C farming, where being able to kill a monster with one weapon skill will be a net gain when you are constantly switching between monsters. This weapon, or the Kaja version prior to the final upgrade, is often the first weapon a warrior aims for, because it is relatively easily accessible and it is very strong. While the Naegling will likely outdamage most other options in shorter fights, a warrior's trademark weapon is the Great Axe. The Aeonic Great Axe Chango can also deal out significant damage, and in certain scenarios can even outperform the Naegling. The Chango is a higher end weapon that benefits greatly from being completely upgraded to rank 15, which makes it slightly more difficult to obtain than an Ambuscade weapon. Once it's upgraded, the Chango can become one of the fastest TP generating weapons a warrior has access to. It excels in spamming the weapon skill upheaval and generating high-level skill chains. Chango shines in longer fights where it can self-skill chain or create incidental skill chains with other party members who are likely spamming Savage Blade. Upheaval won't do as much damage as Savage Blade, but it can weapon skill faster and create skill chains that do big damage, making it an excellent option for longer fights where the weapon skill frequency will even out the numbers. A Great Axe also has added utility due to the weapon skill Armor Break. Armor Break is a wind-based defense down that reduces a target's defense by 25%. This is an incredibly important weapon skill to use at the start of the fight. Keep in mind that if you decide to utilize Full Break, it will overwrite Armor Break's stronger defense down. Armor Break is typically the best option in most scenarios. Here's a visual comparison of the two weapons we've discussed. On the top left we have Chango self-skill chaining a full 4-step skill chain. On the top right we have Nagling with the standard Savage Blade spam. Bottom right is Chango with only Upheaval spam and coincidental light skill chains. And the bottom left, just to have a visual, is the Prime Great Axe Lafria, which combines both skill chain power and spike damage power, effectively combining the strongest attributes of both of the other weapons. While this is an anecdotal example, it does showcase the ideas a pro warrior needs to consider. Are there skill chain opportunities? How long is the fight typically? Will spike damage from Savage Blade effectively beat out Chango's weapon skill frequency and opportunities to skill chain with other party members? All of these questions go into choosing the right weapon for the right situation. Moving on, we'll go over some tips and tricks to optimize performance as a warrior. The first thing is to familiarize yourself with how each weapon skill you use works. If a weapon skill has an FTP multiplier like Savage Blade or Impulse Drive, it may be worth holding to a certain TP threshold. Take into account TP bonuses from things like Fencer and Warcry, and hold TP to optimal levels. Keep in mind that weapon skills like Upheaval can interact differently based on the weapon that you're using. If you're using Upheaval with a Chango, it can optimally be used at 1000 TP plus whatever TP bonuses you have. However, if you're using another Great Axe, it benefits the weapon skill greatly to hold TP to 2 to 2500 because they don't have the TP bonus and the weapon skill damage boost that comes with the Chango. Another thing to keep in mind is the lockout delay that comes after using a job ability and how to minimize downtime during fights. If you're burning SPs and trying to kill something as fast as possible, you don't want to burn precious seconds by being locked into job ability animations. There are a few ways to manage this. Typically, longer lasting abilities like Berserk or Aggressor should be used before engaging the monster. For shorter duration buffs like Warcry or Mighty Strikes, I prefer to use these during combat. You can cut the animation lock short by using another job ability or a weapon skill. An easy way to do this would be to ensure that you have TP for a weapon skill, pop your Warcry or Mighty Strikes, then execute the weapon skill to restart the melee round to maximize how much time you are actively doing damage. And lastly, remember to take advantage of damage type weaknesses the monsters may have. Now we'll go over a start to finish fight example for a warrior. Before arriving at the fight, find out what weapon type and weapon skill will be most effective. If you're skill chaining, make sure you're using an element that will not heal the monster or have other adverse effects during the fight. Make sure you bring food and panaceas to make sure that you're fully buffed and can remove debilitating debuffs from yourself in case your healer is otherwise busy. Communicate with your party. If you're expected to perform a defense down by using Armor Break, be prepared to do that at the start of the fight and potentially change weapons if that's necessary. Use your longer lasting abilities like Berserk prior to engaging. On engagement, if there is no tank, do a quick provoke to make sure the monster doesn't run to the back line while you debuff. Lower defense with Armor Break and resistances with Tomahawk if that's necessary. Once that's done, it's time to use Warcry and Mighty Strikes as needed. Remember to have TP ready to go to cancel out the animation lock. Hold TP as necessary based on the weapon skill you're using. Remove particularly bad debuffs with panaceas, and make sure you support the party and have fun blasting monsters away with high damage weapon skills until they decide to give up and fall over. Remember that a warrior's best trait isn't dishing out damage, but supporting the party by buffing party members, debuffing monsters, and taking the brunt of the damage while still being an effective damage dealer. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for stopping by. If you liked the video, consider checking me out on Twitch at Mythposter Syndrome. If you have any questions, feel free to hop in the Discord linked below and send them my way. I'll see you next time.